When I was younger and learning about photosynthesis in school and everything, and how plants use what we breathe out to actually create food and live, I would spend my recess time just breathing on all the bushes. And I felt like it was that moment in time that, I recognized that the world around us is alive, and that we can have a relationship with our environment, with nature. And ever since then, it's just been unquestionable for me to respect nature, to think of nature as something that's alive, something magical. When we started Funda Forest, what we wanted to focus on was really reforestation and making it accessible. But when the pandemic struck and the typhoons came, reforestation wasn't enough. And so Funda Forest became for the future, because when we think about the future, we think of both people and planet and what we can do now to better it. And our way is through telling stories, through taking pictures and sharing these stories and pictures to our friends. Because together we can create change. You don't have to be anyone else to be a person that can change the world. You can do what you love, whether it's art or dance or song or math or science. There's a difference that you can make by just doing what you love. So before we go out and take pictures and dive into your very own stories and advocacies, I'm gonna show you one of the photo series that I did and kind of explain how I took the pictures, chose the pictures, and how it connects to the bigger story that I do want to tell about a year after the typhoons, where I went out to the Bicol region and interviewed typhoon survivors and local climate refugees. I did a trip back into the Bicol region, one of the worst hit areas to the typhoons last 2020. And I came back after a year that the typhoons hit, because I realized that people stopped talking about what happens after the typhoons once the donation drive stops, once media outlets get tired of reporting it. And that's when I went back and just tried to document the realities on ground, how nothing much has changed since the day that the typhoon left. And it broke my heart that people weren't talking about it. People didn't know that things were as bad as a year before. So I chose this picture as the opening because I just feel like it really brings out the emotion, at least that I felt going around these communities. I wanted to show in this photo just how hard life is and how much more devastating it was when the typhoons came. And I feel like you can tell a lot about a person through their hands. This is another island that I went to where I met Evangeline, who's part of a fishing community. And her community held on to their houses while the typhoon came. And after the typhoon left, the only thing in their house that was left was what they were holding on to. Everything else was just wiped away. The most hurtful stories are those of the children who don't even know where the typhoons come from. They don't know what the climate crisis is about. They don't learn these things because they're in such remote places. And I ended with this because I feel like it's one of the most powerful photos in the photo series, at least for me. There's the light place with the child. She looks like she's caught in a net. And this really just shows me like it won't end here with just our generation. The climate crisis will continue to affect those who were just born, those who had nothing to do with aggravating the effects of this climate crisis. And so it affects the innocent. And I just wanted to show like that the climate crisis is not a concept here. It's real and it affects Filipinos day by day. I feel like photography in disaster zones, it takes a kind of tenderness. It needs tenderness, it needs empathy, and most of all respect for when we come into these communities and ask people to recount the stories of when a typhoon came or when something bad happened in their home. It's hard work, but the hardest part about it is remembering these people, having connections with them, and knowing that they're still struggling. But it's needed work. Yeah, it's hard, but without what we do, some people wouldn't have anything to eat. They wouldn't have slippers sometimes. They wouldn't be able to go to school. And some wouldn't have a roof over their heads. And so it's really, it's hard, but it's, you know, you can't not do it. Sorry, yeah. Thank you. I think and I feel through our photos and our social media campaigns that we've created this movement of not forgetting about the people that have been affected, of remembering that there are still so many millions of Filipinos that need our help and that deserve better than what they have now. And I feel like even just one picture showing that narrative that something needs to change is something powerful. A photo can be powerful when it has a clear, concise, and needed message. And since then, we were able to raise more funds again to go back into these communities and provide more solar lights, more water filters, more food, more hygiene kits, things people still didn't have a year after the typhoons.
How do you get your like a lot of the photos are super vulnerable, like you can see them crying. How do you get them to be so comfortable with you?
I also have to be vulnerable myself, like really explain why I'm there, the story I want to share, and how important they are to this story. So I always first ask permission if I can bring out a camera or a phone. A phone is actually a way to like break that barrier because they all have cell phones. So when I show them, oh, here's a cell phone picture, they're like, okay, this is what you're gonna be doing. And so I think spending that time with them before even like pulling out a camera or a phone is so important to that vulnerability that they share with me. Does anyone else have other questions?
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Are you all ready?
Yeah, I'm excited to
Yeah.
see what happens.
Okay, nice. So, thank you.
Sure, thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you very much.
You also. I believe very deeply that photography is a great tool for social change. I've seen it for myself, how pictures can move people, it can create empathy, it can connect people to things and places that they wouldn't have ever seen unless someone took a picture of it. And I think when people discover new things, when people see new places and hear new stories, That's when we get to think differently. That's when we get to challenge narratives. And that is so important in creating social change where, we have to challenge our biases, we have to challenge the present, because social change is about evolving, it's about moving forward and leaving no one behind. Really what I just want to do with my photography, I want to share truth, and I want to make my photography a way for more help to come in to these communities that need it the most.